Okay, this is Conquest of Paradise. I had to make a decision of what I want to play. I've got a phone interview tomorrow. Boop, boop, boop. So I didn't want to go with one of the heavier new games. There's no question there. I don't feel like I'm up to speed on any of the rules. I was considering replaying Sword of Rome. Maybe not even videoing, just to get the full experience of it. Because I did enjoy it a great deal. I feel like I know the rules now after struggling through them. And I think that's what I'm going to do next. But this has been on my list of things that really need a video and that I kind of want to play. So I've played this before once. I had a lot of fun with it. It's sort of an empire building game. Well, it is an empire building game. It's also an exploration game. The 4 players start out as different Polynesians: Samoa, Tonga, Raiatea, and Hiva. And they start out as a couple villages. Maybe some. Let me go over the different kinds of forces we got. We got the Explorer. Everybody's got one of these. Bad things can happen as you're exploring. Empty hexes, you can end up lost, in which case you lose them for a turn, basically. But normally, you're exploring the territories to see what kind of value you can get out of them before you colonize. And you're allowed a certain number of areas that you've discovered that are hidden. Anything you've discovered, you can flip up on the map. You can withdraw your explorer from the game for a turn if he's not lost in order to improve your production. This is a game in which production is important. You get these little player aid card that lists the costs for all the different items, and basically each village produces 1 point. What else do we have? We have families, colonists, dummy counters. These are just home warriors. If you get attacked, your villages have a certain amount of warriors. These are transport canoes, which can be used for a couple of things. They can be used to move colonists around. They can also move warriors, but the warriors can't invade. And they can be used, and you'll see this, to set up a chain of transport canoes, which connects your empire, basically. That can't go through open sea, though. But it can go through these kind of these valueless atolls, which, you know, you're not able to build a village on them. They're not worth a lot of points at the end of the game. We got victory points over on the card. They're worth a ½ point each for having those under your transport canoe chains. But what else do we have? We have warriors. These can be used to conquer. They can also help you defend. We have war canoes, which are like warriors. They're a little more expensive, and they can't rule. Warriors, if they survive a battle, can like take over enemy villages. And that's about it for pieces. Well, we have these villages, which are a shared pool. The person who owns the space kind of has control over it. The way that's actually marked officially is by rotating the pieces, which can be kind of weird, but that's that indicates who owns what. So all Samoan pieces will be facing this way, for example, and likewise with each of the other tribes or whatever. Over here we have a pile of exploration chits and a pile of hexes when you find an island group. The last one there, the South Island, that's a double hex, which you have to find the first part in the pile, and then the second part has to be playable on the map. What else do we have? We have the ability to go explore South America. And if you hit one of these little island groups on the way, you get a bonus, the Galapagos Island bonus, which makes it easier to get to South America. If you get there, you get yams. And yams are kind of cool. They give you victory points, and they also, I don't remember what they do. They improve something in your production. I don't know. They may help on some of the cards. I don't really remember. They certainly give you the victory points, though, so they're kind of cool that way. What else do you get in the game? Okay, let's look at the components. The cards, heavy stock, like the designer editions for the GMT games. Not bad. It's a small deck, easy enough to shuffle. A little painful on the knuckles, but okay. Counters, pretty standard fare. Nothing fantastic. Pretty pictures on them. Colors are kind of difficult to tell apart, which is a little annoying. The map is kind of disappointing. Not so much because of how it looks. I mean, it's empty and you've got to fill it with islands, and the counters for that are fine. Instead, it's the warping factor. It kind of buckles. It's just troublesome. I mean, you can put it under a big board before you play, whatever. So this is kind of in an interesting position as a game. It's not... Oh. The rules. So I've been kind of grumping about GMT's rules recently, but this is a perfect set of rules. It's exactly the right style, and it's the normal GMT style for a game of this complexity. It's 12 pages of rules, which may be a little long for what they are, but it's, you know, larger type and whatever. Nothing, you know, nothing different from what you're used to in GMT in terms of layout, but they're perfect for this game. They're exactly the right level. They're you know, well written, very clear. They're not overly specific. They don't repeat themselves. They say exactly what needs to be said and exactly how it needs to be said, and they don't require any more development beyond what they have. There's a nice table of contents on it. And then there's a set of designer notes. I haven't read these this time, but I read them the first time that I played. A lot of information on a period that very few people know about. A lot of it's mythical. It's very interesting. Doesn't really change your game experience much, although there is a card catalog in there which could be useful. But other than that, it's you know, I think this is at the right level for this game. What about the game itself? I don't know quite what to call this. This fits under my WIMP games list, which doesn't mean anything bad. It just means it's not really quite a war game. It's very simple. Combat is done with a single die roll. Doesn't matter what your odds are or anything like that. And eventually, one side or the other is just defeated. Each time you roll, something takes a loss. And, you know, numbers count, but they're not cumulative the way, say, buckets of dice are. I don't know how historical that is, but it works for the game. Okay. Kind of like Risk's rolls work. Except here, you're guaranteed to always have an effect. And here's some of the other tables. The exploration table, again, very simple. You roll a die. Actually, no, you don't roll a die. Your picks determine how much you pay, and you get these kind of knots. And once you go, if you have 1 to 4 knots, you can keep going. Once you hit 5 knots, you have to return. If you break 5 knots, if you go over it, you go into the lost box, and you don't come back the next turn, which means no exploration, and you can't withdraw your explorer to turn inward and get extra production. A couple other things on the map. We got some islands that start out on the map. None of the ones in the deck are like this, but they start out on the map and they're already inhabited, and they have that many soldiers defending them. And they also have villages on them. So they're a better target, but they're also harder to defeat. And then we got these little mosquitoes, which, if you occupy them, you might lose villagers because you get malaria. There's no malaria from Fiji outward, so whatever you find out here is more survivable. That makes these very questionable to actually colonize. You have to pay to attack them, and then once you get them, most of them are subject to diseases. Truck is not, apparently. So, going back to about the game, I think it's a very nice, light, almost war game, but I call it a wimp game, and I got a geeks list about that. It doesn't, you know, it's not a Euro. There's dice, there's combat, there's effects like that. It's at about the same level as some Ameritrash games are, but, you know, it's not the sexy kind of theme that most AT games would really like. But it's certainly not a war game. The systems are too simple. It sort of sits in this neutral ground in between everything, which makes it overlooked by a lot of people, but it's a very, very good game. And we'll be seeing just how it plays as we go, I think. I've actually explained most of the rules of the game in this little vid, but I'd like to do the action report as I go and let you guys see what goes on. Victory points, depending on the number of players, there's different victory point stopping places. You get points for the villages you own. You get points for, yeah, we got the whole list here. I mean, there's really not a lot. You know, this is almost the whole rules right here and here. The rest is fluff, which is kind of a question of why did you need 12 pages for it, but hey, I'm not going to complain. It's not hard to read. It's a little bit more effort than is perhaps necessary for this, but it was an enjoyable read. Yeah, and I guess we'll wrap this up and load it up and let you guys see something that maybe you haven't investigated before and I think is well worth the cost that you can get this for.